Hello World of Visions fans, I'm Jackie Fox, and today I'm going to be going over the tier list of best equipment for Veritas of the Earth as a companion to my last video on comparing builds of Veritas of the Earth. The top slots, the God tier, should be pretty obvious. For A tier, we talked about most of these things, but the Venerable Heart really adds a lot of cool stuff to Veritas of the Earth's kit. It also should make negative 70% defense penetration on Crag Bash possible after buff, which is pretty cool. And it stacks so many things into its buff that it is kind of a worthy replacement maybe of some of his kit. We also have the Zombie Mask. Just giving him re-raise seems like a pretty cool idea. There's a lot of other ways that I think that this TMR fails, but just him getting the opportunity to A, come back with enough HP that he might be able to take a hit and then heal himself up to full. Just makes it a little bit better than his TMR, but also, since you really want to be wearing the Maximilian, you don't necessarily want a TMR armor for this guy either. Then looking down in the alright tier, we have the lightweight steel fists for their extra accuracy, but really because this is probably the best fist TMR. There are other fist TMRs, but I think this is probably the best of them, generally speaking. You may even go the route, if you get desperate enough to use this thing, where you just don't equip a fist to this guy at all, and make him more of a defensive wall. But other TMR slot options that we have here, the Ravenous Earring from Vega would give him the ability to berserk people on hit. This is gonna screw with basically everybody, and it's also a mechanic that I really kind of like, and I like a lot of the ways that you can do it, and especially for a character like this who's probably not going to be doing the most damage, as he's meant to be more of a tank, but still should be attacking regularly. You want to give him something to do with those attacks, and being able to berserk people on the front line seems like it would be incredibly useful. If you don't have the Dragon's Fangs, and you're looking for something that's gonna give him some sort of benefit, I think one of the better, if you can get the +6 of the Cat Claws. And really this is also kind of like the Zombie Mask, gonna let you down in a number of ways, but what it will do is give you agility, and this is gonna help him get out in front, and he really kind of needs that. I think that's important to prioritize in his kit. You can also get away with running the Veritas of the Winds TMR Blade Stream on him. This is really helpful into the matchups it's helpful into. It's such an incredible TMR as it is that I think it bears mentioning, maybe for basically everybody, but this is a character that I think it could work for especially well because his buffs aren't quite... You want him to get his buffs off, but it's not quite as critical that he get all of them off, because one of his best buffs comes during combat and he will only do it after he's taking damage. So he kind of can work something into his buff slots early on, which is why I like some of these, added effect on hit TMRs. But this one could also work very well as well. Then we have the Gaia Guard. The combination of defense penetration and healing power up is pretty helpful for him. It doesn't some other things, but this feels like one of the more mediocre signature items for Veritas. And it kind of overlaps in that the accessory you want to have on this guy is almost certainly the Guardian's Crystal, so you probably just don't want to equip this if you're equipping an accessory at all in non-TMR slots, because you might just be running Dragon Claws and Maximilian. Then we have, for a couple more accessory TMR options, I find both of these really interesting for different reasons. Big ally buffs in either case, you're either boosting attack and giving resistances to some really disabling statuses, things that tanks really worry about, I think. Fairly relevant stuff that would stop him from healing himself and responding the way you would expect him to in battle, and that's going to be Elias TMR. This is also going to offer him some agility, which is pretty great. On the other hand, you can also get resistance to a couple other status effects which may not be quite as key off of the first aid bag, but it's also going to offer you and allies 20% max HP, which is pretty impactful for Veritas of the Earth specifically, and hopefully for the rest of his team. This is a similar HP boost to the Orca Boots. It's not quite as high, but it does hit multiple characters. So this could be a pretty good TMR for a lot of those reasons. Then, moving into the tier, we're looking at a bunch of armor that is potentially pretty good or adds something to Veritas of the Earth that could be beneficial, but at the same time, it's TMR slot armor. Already, I'm not inclined to want to use this, but especially not for a character that has such an incredible synergy with what's probably the best armor in the game. I mean, he really makes this stuff incredibly powerful. They have a great synergy. So why would you want to run a different armor? That's why we haven't really... This is why these are the first armors on the list. But these are the armors worth considering. Also, Bells. He doesn't need the AP regen, but it's a pretty solid accuracy and agility TMR, so just the stats work for him, but the buff doesn't, which is kind of sad. I mean, it's not the worst, but like, he doesn't need the AP as bad as most other characters would. You probably have a better person on your team to put Bells on. Kane's Dragoon's Helm, though, is actually really cool. This would give him haste and movement up, which is, while it doesn't increase his agility, or while it doesn't have agility on it, this combination of haste and battlefield movement is just so incredible for a tank to get placement way out in front of everybody, so they can waste all the best skills, all the AP of your opponent, before anyone gets in range to be AoE'd with them. This could be such a great TMR for him, and maybe this is one of the TMRs that would be worthy of kind of elevating a little bit further, just because it works really well. But it is limited. Then we have the Veritas of the Frost TMR. This is also a TMR armor, and it is going to give you the ability to inflict Frostbite on hit, which is pretty cool. Like, I'm not going to knock it. Especially since he's good into physical, the ability to add Frostbite into that equation could be really cool, because these are characters that are going to have trouble with that anyways. I think this effect is slight. If you're going for this, though, you should probably run the Blade Soul instead and just shut them down early, instead of waiting until you hit them later to start frostbiting them. Frostbite could still be really good, especially on a tank, because he's going to be out in front, and he's likely to pair up with these characters and frostbite them before they've really used their AP restore for many turns, so that could really get some good use out of the frostbite. But I think the matchups that this does well into, the Blade Stream does better and allows you to equip better armor. Then there's the Glinting Armor. This is just a classic CT up and slash attack up in a square around the unit. This could be really good for him and enabling him and his team to just snap on people and lay into them for damage in a way that can be really hard to beat even this day and age. This is almost the oldest TMR on this list, and definitely worth mentioning. Then we have two shields. That's actually a shoulder pad or Polian, or however you say that, for Veritas of the Frost. But we have the shield that would offer him unit attack resistance and courage. And we have a shield that offers protect, regen, and HP absorb 25% for self, which is pretty good. Arguably, you might be able to say that I should have swapped this and Alphonse's TMR, Al's shoulder spike, just because the HP absorb is probably more impactful on other characters on your team, as he's not necessarily the damage dealer, and that would spread it around better. But the protect and HP regen is pretty cool, and I think would be pretty helpful for him. And this is also a free unit and a TMR that we'll be able to get into the future. This is going to be in the next collaboration with the free unit. And then finally, for the if you absolutely fucking have to category, we have the better armors of the game. The army plate is really good in a really modern armor. The brigandine, just having high AoE resistance, has always been a classic. The platinum helm for him on the right composition, I think, is pretty good because it has a way of increasing his slash resistance even higher than you can get with TMR passives. So that could be pretty cool for maximizing slash resistance for him if that's the route you want to go. We have Al's shoulder spike for the HP restore, regen for allies and attack, which is pretty cool. And then finally the reminiscent hairpin, because this does technically give him the most raw agility of any TMR, or especially any accessory TMR, which is great for him. But also, parts of the buff are counterintuitive, as I mentioned before. It would actually reduce his hate, which is kind of the opposite of what you want on a character like this. Even though some of the other things it would do for him would be helpful, but also not super critical for him. You would very safely be equipping this to him with the buff off just for the raw agility. That's a little bit of a waste, but if you want to do it, it's not the worst. It's still worth mentioning. These are basically honorable mentions. And the one that I haven't honorably mentioned yet is Dario the Crystalborn's TMR. I don't think that this character is going to have necessarily a place in fighting and shutting down mages. It's just not what he's built to be into. If you're playing him in this way, then the ability to inflict silence upon hit would be really, really, really clutch for him and really important. But I don't think ideally this is what you want to be fighting with him. But if you were, this would probably be the way to go. And also seems to have a pretty strong synergy with Ashamont's ability to sleep, also sleep and silence mages. So there could be an Earth theme that could be built around this type of thing if you also have Dario's TMR. Thank you so much for watching, and if you would, remember the free-to-play option is to like and subscribe. Also, ring the bell so that YouTube is sure to show you all of the stuff, even the stuff that they try to block or restrict or anything like that. You'll get access to all of my stuff. But also, if you want access to even more, you can click that link in the description to gain access to the entire Jackie Fox media universe, including another YouTube channel, a podcast, books, one that is on sale in hardback for $15 right now as It Even Happens While We Sleep, kind of a newer techno-modern thriller, and I hope you enjoy it. But also, if you just want to donate to the pool fund, there are Patreon and Ko-fi links there as well. With all that being said, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.